based on some thought, and you make proposal and you get
Right.
fund from those information that can say the information, but which are not deeper or which are not really a baseline information. And we get the funds, and in the fund there is no the finance related to the baseline. How are you going to be able to get that baseline information in order to be able to compare after and before and after?
So when okay, so the before and after is mainly very relevant for the cases where you are going to conduct interventions. And these interventions, because for just the usual research that we know about, we documented the problem, we are using statistics, right? So for example, based on the ACV or labor survey or agricultural survey conducted according to what you are going to investigate, that's the problem. You bring a project about electrification, so you're talking about the percentage of people without electricity. In some cases, it's zero sometimes. Or it's there, maybe it's expensive, so you discuss that one. So that is enough information. Because sometimes for research, what you are trying to do is that you want to understand the problem more than beyond what is known now. You will find, for example, in some areas they have electricity, but people are not using it, right? So as a researcher, you want to understand why. You don't need a baseline for that, right? But if you are going to conduct an intervention, if you are going to conduct an intervention to try to educate people and maybe change their gender cultural perceptions, it's good that you maybe correct some data on what they really think before you start the project. So it's not like a mass that you have to connect a baseline, but you can understand a baseline in that sense. The baseline is where are we now before we change something. As I also said, sometimes you may not need a baseline. What you can do, you have two similar areas, you intervene for a given time, so which means that you have the treatment, that is that group of people where you intervened, but you have another similar group where you did not intervene. That's the control. So there are methods that you can use. And then you match individuals with the same characteristics. So you have a cell A and cell B, they are similar. You intervene in cell A, and then in the end, you correct the data on cell A and B. So you look at the individual one in cell A and another individual very similar in cell B. Gender, marital status, employment, and so on. And then you have to convince that the difference you observe is actually a result of the intervention. That's an advanced field in a field which is actually very quantitative. Yes.
The same point. I would like to know what can be your output. Have like emergency projects authorities at the end of the day, because they want that project to happen here, they double
overestimate or
overestimate.
yeah.
They get wrong numbers, the report will be different to what you have given us. So what do you?
I think that is very interesting, because if you tell some people that, okay, we are going to help you if you reach this given threshold. So everyone is going, you are going to help you if you are below this threshold. Everyone is going to try to be below that. So that's I think those are real life problems, right? So then you find out in the end that, but I think some people, they actually tend to, they're going to say they have more poor, right? So it can go both ways, but sometimes it's asymmetric, right? So now, you base on that information, and then there's an intervention. Okay, people say that they're very poor, why in fact they are not, and then you intervene, right? In that case, you are going to overestimate the effect of the intervention. That happens. That happens. But when it comes, for example, to income, people, they tend to underestimate their incomes. So that is very interesting, and there is no way you are going to know. Even how can you know that these people lied? So you will see the numbers, and then you will see that you have made this much impact, but there's some overestimation or underestimation. That is not very uncommon. But of course, we know that everything we do, it's about estimates. Those are estimates. If you see it in another way, people may, if another way, people may, let's say, economic status, and then you intervene, and then you come back for impact evaluation, and then you see that nothing has changed. Because at the beginning they overestimated. So in fact, an impact, but that is not visible because at the beginning they had overestimated. Yeah. So that's a challenge. Yes.
When it comes to the president, does it require a project on site to run the baseline study? When you have an idea of the project, you can include the budget of the baseline
Of the project. If it's an intervention, it makes sense. Demographic and health survey, you have data by district. The household living survey, the ACV, labor survey, you have all those data, and you have data from local authorities. That is very broad, so you have a broad idea. But if you want to conduct a specific intervention, it makes sense to include that as part of the methodology, that you will start with the base. The same thing when you do research proposal, you can include, for example, pre-test, right? Because when you design, you write down those questions, you really have no idea how they will be received, get the information you need. So a pre-test is something you also include in your proposal. So how you conduct a pre-test, you take a small number of individuals and then you ask them those questions. And then you bring back the answers. And then you go and revise your questions. And then you come up with the final questionnaire. Some studies, they skip that stage, but it's actually important. Because the way you are designing the questions, maybe that's not the way it will come out when you go on the field, right? Maybe people are giving vague answers. Maybe you gave A, B, C, D, and there's E, F, G. yeah. So, and then after you describe the main activities, of course, what is the target or the beneficiary population? This is also important. If it's research, this is the population from which you're going to draw the sample.